Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Brain 202. Today's webinar is all about sort of the next phase in evolving your brain, gardening and evolving your brain. We're hoping that everyone on today's webinar is familiar with the brain and has even attended a Brain 101 class. We have the Brain 101 every Friday afternoon, and you're more than welcome to join and see the basic features of creating your own digital brain, creating thoughts, adding attachments, files, and content, and syncing your brain up to the cloud and accessing your brain from multiple devices. Well, today is the Brain 202. We're going to talk about how to take that brain that you've developed and has evolved over time and grown over time and clean things up, create new subcategories, create thought structures with more meaning, easier access to your data, and really talk about some of the more advanced features of the brain application that you may not have previously been aware of. I'm joined today by Juan Lopera, who will be answering questions in the GoToMeeting question panel.
Hey everyone, I'll be answering your questions today. Let me know if you have any questions, obviously. I'll be here.
Great, and feel free to challenge us with your questions. It is the Brain 202, so it's all about more advanced features. So we look forward to hearing about what you're interested in knowing more about. And at the end of the demo today, if I didn't cover the feature that you were interested in, Juan will throw out a few questions my way and we'll take a closer look at things that people may be interested in seeing. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, as I've shared with you already, hopefully you're familiar with the Brain software. If not, please do sign up for a Brain 101 webinar. We don't want to be sharing information with you that's over your head or too advanced right away. This is a Brain 202 webinar, so I just want to make that perfectly clear. And none of us are immune to the growth and additional information that is going into your brain over time. As my brain databases grow, I've got, yes, more than one, and I'm constantly adding new information. And you've probably heard me say in the past, I never delete anything out of my brain. I'll archive it. I'll move it to a different area. I'll store it for reference at a later date. And that has really come in handy for me over time. Yes, my brain database has grown and evolved over time. In fact, this is my own recreational brain, my personal brain. Now I share a couple of thoughts in this brain on the Brain 101 webinars, just to share with you features that I particularly like to use. But today I just want to share with you just the size of my brain database. Notice I ran a report here of all thoughts in my brain. I've got 7,007 thoughts in my brain database. This brain was created in the Brain 1.0 and has evolved over time. I have evolved over time. I've added new hobbies, new interests. Since the day this brain database was created, I've had kids, my family has grown. So suddenly, instead of keeping track of, vintage cars that I'm interested in, I'm keeping track of my kids' soccer games and their science fair schedules and so forth. So things change and evolve, whether it's a personal recreational brain or a project that you're working on or developing. And it's very important to be able to go into your brain and modify, edit, and clarify data and information. So I'm not going to be using this brain because I use the practices that I'll be sharing with you today on a daily basis. I'm constantly gardening in my brain. I'm moving thoughts into different structures, different areas from time to time as I use the brain daily. And so the brain I'm going to be using is a sample brain. And as you can see, everything in this brain is about me, my work, my getting things done methodologies, my worldviews. So I've got a lot of thoughts in this area on just nature, politics, environmental issues, and things that I'm interested in. And of course, my own direct personal life. And as you can see, I've got a lot of information in this brain. everything in my brain is related to me. Even my real brain that you just saw with 7,007 thoughts, they are all related to me in some way. But of course, no one would create a brain with one thought in the center with their name and 7,000 links underneath that one thought. That wouldn't be maintainable over time, and it would be cumbersome, hard to navigate. Of course, we all create subdirectories and so forth, whether you're using files and folders or using the brain. It's important to categorize and group together similar thoughts, projects, ideas, and so forth. And that's what we need to do here. This brain has become a little bit cumbersome. Everything is related to me in some capacity, but as you can see, I can't even fit all of the child thoughts underneath personal life in one view. I have to scroll to see to see the full set of thoughts, or start minimizing the notes, or maybe even make the plex a little bit smaller to see all of this content. And typically, sort of a safe rule of thumb, if you start having anywhere between 10 and 20 child thoughts underneath one particular thought in the brain, I think at that time you should consider creating a subcategory. What are some commonalities in that group of child thoughts that you can divide things into? Is it east and west, north and south, important, not important, and so forth? You can find some type of commonality to start dividing that up, and you're not making it harder on yourself by adding that extra click, that extra step. You're actually making it easier to discover that information. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to create an intervening category for my own personal life. In this particular brain, I'm keeping track of all of my family and friends. So I'm going to create a thought simply called people. And so I'll click and drag a new child thought, people. And there's my people thought. And with that as the center or active thought, any thought that I click and drag that's now a sibling is going to relink itself underneath the people thought. And I can scroll down. There's Brendan and Brigitte and Cher. There's my dad. Oh, there's a lot popping up right here. Dan Brown, Debbie Miller, scuba diving, no, and we continue scrolling down until we find more people thoughts. My kids, we'll get those under there, and we can always come back to this at a later date. But there you can see I've moved a really large chunk of thoughts underneath. There's Sally and Shelley, move them under there as well. And we'll just scroll down a little bit more. Vacation planning, there we go. So already I'm making an impact. Suddenly I can see all of the thoughts underneath personal life at one time, and I don't need to scroll. So already I'm making a bigger impact. And I still see people thoughts. I missed some. I can go back at any time and say, all right, there's Spencer. I'll go link Spencer. I'm going to click and drag the Spencer parent thought down to people, and then right click between personal life and Spencer and unlink. So I've moved Spencer over there. I'm going to find one more, Bob Jones. And this is, now we're starting to get into the specialty features of the brain that you may not have previously been aware of. Bob Jones is a person, a friend of mine. He belongs under the people thought as well. Now, instead of clicking and dragging and releasing, then going back and right clicking and unlinking Bob Jones from personal life, I am going to hold down the shift key. And the shift key in this scenario can be referred to as the exclusive parent feature. So by holding down shift and releasing my mouse, what I've done is I've unlinked Bob from any other parent thoughts he had. He only had one, it was personal life. I would have known that it was more if it was a green link. A green gate. Green gates in the brain in the default view or color scheme. This can be modified if you've modified your color schemes. But a green gate simply means there's more links in that direction and they're not currently visible on the screen. A hollow link means there's nothing. The my tennis thought has no child thoughts, no jump thoughts. Yoga thought has a green link or a green gate, excuse me, above it as a parent. That means yoga is linked to something else. Bob was not linked to anything else, so I've unlinked him from his only parent thought, personal life, and now Bob exists under my people thought. So there's Bob Jones. He's a child thought of people. So by holding down the shift key, when you're giving a thought a new parent, you're making that the exclusive parent of that particular thought. A really, really great and helpful feature. Now, there's still more subcategorizing to do, but I'm going to show you a few different ways to do this. Next, I'm going to get into travel. I've got a lot of thoughts in here about hotels and places that I'd like to go, things that I'd like to see. So I am going to create a child thought for travel. Actually, maybe I'll skip travel and I'll just combine that all with hobbies. I'm going to create a child thought called hobbies. And underneath hobbies, I'll put my travel. Travel is a hobby for me. So is music, so are sports. So let's get all of those underneath my, my new thought called hobbies. Now, once again, I can start clicking and dragging, but we're gonna go into another feature, and that is mass selecting groups of thoughts. If I control click on a thought, I've added that thought into the selection box. We're going to be doing a lot with the selection box here in the next few minutes. So on a Windows machine, control click, you'll add a thought to the selection box. On a Mac, that's a command click. You can also control click. I'm going to say control click from here on out because I am on Windows today. I can also control click and drag a box. So animals and nature, Antarctica, baseball, bathrooms. So control click and drag a square, a frame around a grouping of thoughts. And now, as you can see, anytime there are these animated lines, we call those marching ants. You see the marching ants around a thought, you know that thought has been added into the selection box. The reason why we identify that for you is because you can continue navigating around through your brain. So let's say I go into camping and I want to start control clicking some of these thoughts. I certainly can, and I can click without holding down the control key to navigate or control click to add into the selection box. If I just say, you know, if I just think, well, I want to add camping and not add individual child thoughts that I've just selected, I can control click again. It's like a toggle switch. So you can add and subtract thoughts into your selection box. Very, very important feature. We're going to be using that a few times throughout today's webinar. You can also control click on a gate to select all thoughts that are connected to that particular gate. Now, if I moved all of these underneath my hobby thoughts, I'm also moving thoughts for my house into this area of the brain. The people thought would now be a child thought and so forth. So I want to be a little bit more meticulous about what I'm selecting. And so I'm going to hold down, I close the selection box. I'm starting over, control click on activities. So these are travel, airlines. So there's going to be quite a few bathrooms. That's in my house. I'm going to create a separate house thought. Books, camping, diving. There's more house. Furniture, that's house. Here's some music thoughts, quite a few. Martial arts, loan, that's house. Kitchen, house, back into music. Hiking and gardening, whoops, gardening. I control clicked on a gate, so without even seeing the thoughts, they were added into the selection box. I control clicked again and removed them. I'll do that one more time. Control click on a gate where you can't even see the child thoughts. It does add them, as you see over to the left, into the selection box. Okay, and I've got a few more. So control click, woodworking, music, tennis, music, vacation, states I want to visit, softball, more house, reading, pets, not my people thought, parks, that's travel, organic gardening, and there's some health. I'm going to create a health category. I've selected quite a few. I've selected 30 thoughts. Now, I'm going to, at one time, unlink these thoughts from personal life and make them child thoughts of my new hobbies thought. But what the process I like to follow is first link them into the new area, then go back and unlink them from the previous area. The reason why I like to do that is because if my phone rings or I get distracted, I've got to go do something with the kids, and I unlink these thoughts, and then I close the brain. Now, I could edit undo. There is an undo option. If the brain has not yet been synced, I can undo that particular step. As soon as the brain syncs up to the cloud, that clears the cache of what you can undo. So I first want to link them so they have their new home. Then I'm going to come back to personal life and unlink them. So just sort of a safety net for me. I'm going to travel over to, oh, and I see a few more thoughts. Control click, Hollywood Bowl and hotels. Hollywood Bowl, that fits under travel as well as vacation. So we'll come back to that. As well as music, I mean. So let's go back to my hobbies thought. I have 32 thoughts in my selection box. I'm going to right click in the selection box, and these are all the different types of modifications we can do. I can change their thought types and tags. We will be doing that here in just a bit. I can delete these thoughts all at one time, can copy them into other forms, other outlines, other brains, and so forth. In this case, I am simply linking them as children of hobbies. So all 32 of these thoughts are now child thoughts of hobbies. I go back to personal life and make that the active thought, right click and apply the option to unlink from the current active thought, personal life. So unlink selected thoughts from personal life. And now, boy, things are really starting to clean up very quickly. And if I go into this hobbies thought, there are all those individual hobbies. My music that I'm interested in, reading, all the sports and information, all easily accessible. And I've got just a few categories left. I'm going to create that thought that I mentioned earlier for my house renovations, House, and my last category is health. I could make it health and fitness. I'll just say health. So under health is going to go, I saw some cooking information here. There it is, food and diet. I thought I had a few more categories. I may have moved those underneath a different category. I can come, oh, there it is, my health status. And under house, I've got my kitchen renovation, furniture, DIY home repair, bathrooms, garage, quite a few house thoughts, my loans, and other renovations. Great. Now, I think we've been on the webinar, actually, when I started clicking, it's been about 8 minutes. And in 8 minutes time, I've really organized my personal life. I feel great. Coming into this personal life, sometimes I wouldn't say I'd get stressed, but it would be hard to find something. Clicking around, like it couldn't even see it all on the screen. Where's the thought for scuba diving? I'm alphabetical order looking for scuba. It's actually under diving. I get a little confused. I finally find that information. And of course, I have areas of my brain that do become a little bit overgrown. And I go in, add these intervening thought categories, and suddenly everything is much more accessible. Scuba diving, great, not a problem. That is one of my favorite hobbies. I can come right in here. It is not under S for scuba. There it is, under diving. So I've got easy access to that thought, and I didn't have to scroll and look through that larger group. Still, it took me a second to find the diving thought. There's a lot of different hobbies I have. Maybe I can categorize this area as well. But I'm going to use a different technique for my hobbies. Rather than creating an area for sports, an area for travel, an area for music, I'm going to create those as thought types. So thought types are a great way to classify your information. Also, as we'll see here in a minute, you can filter searches and reports that you're doing by thought type. So you're looking for not just a thought on a particular topic, a thought that is the sports thought type on a particular topic to really, really refine your search results. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create, and you can create as many different thought types in your brain as you'd like. The brain doesn't come pre-populated with thought types. Everyone's mind is different. Everyone's hobbies are different. You're creating a brain because you are a policeman, a nurse, a lawyer, a doctor, a mom, a dad, whatever the case may be, you've got different interests. No two minds think alike, so no two brains ever think alike. It's up to you to create the categories that are important to you. And as you can see, you can subcategorize within your structures. So if you look, for example, under IT assets, I've got all different types of IT assets. I can get into my user communities, my software statuses, whether it's beta, a new release, or reported as a bug, and so forth. And you simply do this by making a thought type the child of another thought type, and you can group your or nest your thought types together. And I'll do that in just a moment. So first, let's create a new thought type for sports. And as you can see, it filters the list as you're typing. In case I didn't notice, I already had the sports thought type there and existing. I don't, so I'm going to create my new type for sports. Nothing in my brain falls under the sports thought type quite yet. I really love to give my thought types an icon. If another thought doesn't already have its own icon, it will inherit your thought type icon. So for sports, I can select from my stock library of icons. The brain has over 2,000 stock icons, and it's looking for anything related to sports. So I'll just give this a little jersey, and everything that is a sports thought type will inherit this particular icon if it doesn't already have a previously assigned icon. I like to color code them as well. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in just a moment. So all of my sports thought types will have, I'm fine with the black text, but let's give it sort of a light pink, no, black text, sorry about that. But the background, we'll give that sort of a light pink background. Fine. So now let's go back to my hobbies. And once again, I'm going to use that selection option, the control clicking, because that for me is the fastest. And I'm going to simply start selecting all of my sports. Camping, that's really a travel thing for me. Diving is a sport. Hiking is sort of a sport, yes. And let me scroll down. Yoga, I'm going to classify that as sports. There's tennis. Oh, and my softball, I love softball. Great. So I've got all of my specifically sports related activities, other activities selected. I'm going to right click in the selection box and make all of these selected thoughts sports. And sports is appearing, let's see, MLMNLP, there, right there at the bottom. So these are all sports. And already you can start seeing that, like, I'm able to identify if something is a sport. It's got that nice red background. So it's starting to stand out just a bit. Let's also specify all of my travel. I love to travel, so all of my travel thoughts are going to get an icon. And I'm going to start speeding up here just a little bit. So travel. And travel, I'll give it an icon, select icon, a little Paris Tower there. And I'm also going to color code. So I click on the travel thought type again. And this time I'm going to go with, I'll keep it with the dark text, but in this case, it's going to have a yellow background. Whoops, I keep doing that. So dark text, I got to click on the background selector and then give it a yellow background. Fantastic. Back to my hobbies and really quickly control click airlines and traveling to Antarctica. Camping I categorize as travel, and Hollywood Bowl, hotels, and parks that I visit. Anything else? Disney Concert Hall, and let's say that is it. Oh, vacation planning, control click on vacation planning. Great, so that is all of my travel. I'm gonna right click once again and make these thought types my travel thought type. Great, now notice it did not color code vacation planning, and that is because vacation planning already had a color background assigned to it. If I clear that up and just say, all right, use the default, it's going to inherit the yellow color. If I go back and change a thought type's icon or color coding, it's universal throughout the brain. It'll change that everywhere that thought type is assigned to a thought. It'll change the background for that thought. And then really quickly, my last one, I just want to have 3 different examples. My last one is going to be music. And that is a new type. And music, I'll skip the icon and just say the background color for music is going to be green. And in my hobbies, I'll select all my music. Now, in this scenario, I've got quite a few. Whoops, let me come back to that. I meant to control click. So hobby, whoops, sorry about that. Let's see, hobbies. And control click on music, control click on Beatles, control click on all of my music thoughts, but one of them I'm going to change, Hollywood Bowl and Disney Concert Hall. Travel, yes, you want to travel to those particular locations, but they're more about the music that's there. So I'm going to add these to my selection box, and that will change the thought type. You can only have one thought type assigned to a thought. So by selecting these, I purposefully added them into my travel. It's really music related. That is why I love them so much. So I'm going to change it to a music thought type. So I've added them in, I right click and I set these thought types. And notice I can create a new type right from here. Sorry, I didn't do that, but it can easily be done as well. But I'll scroll down to music, and music is right up here. Select that, and those are all of my music thought types. So now you can see I've got different thought types color coded. And as I continue to use my brain, I'll be reminded of, all my music thought types are green, my sports are yellow, my vacation and travel, or vacation travel is yellow, my sports are red. So I'll get familiar with those companies and I'll have that nice key identifier. But also we can do this. Rather than just viewing all of my thoughts alphabetically, I can right click on the background and I can arrange my thoughts by type, and it suddenly groups all of those types together. And this is a feature that I really, really love using. I love using this feature, particularly in my business brains, my work-related brains. I've got projects that are at different levels of a phase 1, phase 2, and so forth. And I can group together all my phase 1 processes or completed processes, incompleted processes, in transition processes. They're all related to one particular project that I'm working on, but grouped together accordingly in the and sometimes a larger group than my own limit of 10 or 20. I bypass it when necessary, but I group my thoughts with these thought types. I've got the nice visual identification of my music versus my sports versus my travel in this scenario. And it adds that greater context. And it makes it much faster for me to find the data that I'm looking for. So if I'm interested in planning out a new hiking trip with my kids, hiking is a sport for me, I go right to my hobbies and right to that hiking thought without navigating around alphabetically, through a long list of child thoughts. So just a wonderful, wonderful way to categorize thoughts that you're creating. Now, in some categories or some areas, we also want to start adding some cross references. So for example, Walt Disney Concert Hall. Walt Disney Concert Hall, it's a hobby of mine. It falls under music. Notice that the music thought type is appearing in the Plex. That's a feature that can be turned on and off. I can right click and I can make that not visible. So I already know it's music. I mouse over and I see that it's music, and I need to update the web page on that particular thought. I already know it's music. I don't need it appearing there. However, I know that I want to get to this thought when I am researching vacation planning. So I've got a vacation coming up, and maybe I want to go to, and there's that vacation planning thought. So I want to start thinking about planning a trip to California to go to the Walt Disney Concert Hall for a big concert they're doing, this summer. I mentioned they're in California. I have a thought for California. And again, this is something that I typically cover in the Brain 101. As you start typing in a few letters, the brain will show you all existing thoughts, so you can link to that existing thought. And that's certainly something that I want to continuously do. That's a very simple, sort of low-hanging fruit in this topic of gardening in your brain that you can do on a daily basis. Link to all related pieces of information. But I also want to create some thought tags. We talked about thought types. Only one thought type can be assigned to a thought. Tags can have multiple tags assigned to a single thought. And I always think of a tag as being an attribute of a thought. Once again, we don't pre-populate the brain program with tags that you can assign to the thought. I know there are some applications out there that do that. These are the different categories, over 200 categories you can choose from. It doesn't always, those categories don't always work for me. I want to create my own. My tags are unique to my interests or to my thought process. In this case, I've got a thought, a series of thoughts, and I'd like to create some thought tags as far as what their status is. Here we're in a very recreational area of my brain, but I've got business areas of my brain that I'm working on and projects for my career and so forth in this brain as well. There are some thoughts that contain information that it's very urgent that I attend to that. There are others where I want to attend to it. I want to go visit the Disney Concert Hall, but it's not urgent. It's sort of a back burner thing that I'm thinking about in my mind. And this is a great example of using thought tags. So once again, I'm going to create a new thought tag, and I just mentioned back burner. Great. I'm going to create a tag called back burner. And when I go to Disney Concert Hall, I'm just going to right click, or I can click to open up the thought properties display, either way, and apply the tag of back burner. So do I need to get to the Disney Concert Hall right away? No, this is a back burner idea. It's, the place that I want to visit in the future. But it's not urgent that I get there. What is urgent is that let's see if I can just select something else. I need to set up a pet sitter for a business trip that I'm working on. So I am going to apply an urgent tag here. So pet sitters, tags, urgent doesn't exist yet. So I'll just go ahead and create it from here. And that is a new tag. So now I've got urgent and back burner. They're both statuses for a particular thought, how important it is, either high or low. And of course, I could name them high importance, low importance, whatever naming convention you'd like is great. But they're both considered to be statuses. So I'm actually going to create I'm going to start organizing my tags. I'll create a new tag called status. And under status, I'll have my back burner and my urgent tag. And you can see what that has done in my tag groupings is it grouped them together. Under status, I've got back burner and urgent. So you can call that phase 1, phase 2, DEPCON 1, DEPCON 5, whatever naming convention works for you. It's a really great way to apply more context to your thoughts. And then I'll do one more. I'm going to go back to that Disney Concert Hall. Tickets aren't cheap these days. Travel's not cheap. Hotels. All in all, to get my entire family, onto a plane out to California and go to a concert at Disney Concert Hall, it's going to be expensive. So I'm going to start keeping track of what are my high cost items, my low cost items, or even medium. And that goes for both work. If I'm developing a new line of products and to get the factory up and running, it's a high cost ticket item. However, to start utilizing some social media to get the word out there about this new product I'm creating, that's low cost. I just need to spend some time on TikTok or Twitter or what have you, and start advertising on my own. So I'll start keeping track of those, and that'll help me make better informed decisions in the future. So this Disney concert hall is going to be a high cost ticket item. And we can even click on a tag to see all tags of that type. And I can even apply an icon as well. So select the stock icon, high cost. I want this big red little symbol so I know, hey, whoa, stop, think about it. This is a high cost ticket item. And that appears right there in the Plex. This is the back burner item, it's high cost. Now, the reason why I like creating these tags is number one, again, it gives you greater context there. But number two, you can always search within your brain for all of your urgent action items, high cost ticket items. You've got a little bit of free time. You're thinking, gosh, what do I want to do this weekend? I don't have anything urgent. I've gotten that all taken care of. What are my back burner, things that are going on these days that I've maybe even forgotten about, and I can find them all in the brain right away. And I make this a frequent practice of mine too. I do use that urgent action item thought tag in my business brain. So I have a 3-day weekend coming up on Tuesday morning. All right, time to get back to work, my nose to the grindstone. What needs to be done immediately? I'm going to look up really quickly my urgent action items. I've only got one. It's more of a personal business thing of mine that I need to take care of, and that's find a pet sitter for an upcoming business trip that I'm going on, so I can go to that particular thought and access it very quickly. If I find that this business trip has been delayed, all right, I still need to find a qualified pet sitter, but this is now a back burner item. It's no longer so urgent. I don't need to start my day off by calling pet sitters every morning. I'm going to click, whoops, let me go back to that. I'm going to right click on a tag and replace it. So I'm basically moving a thought through a process. You can create tags, as I mentioned earlier, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. This has moved on to the next phase, or this has been downgraded, in this case from urgent to back burner. So I right click and replace with back burner. And now that weekend comes around where I've got a lot of free time. What do I want to look at? Well, let's see what's in my brain that my organic brain has forgotten about as far as back burner items. So we'll just take a look at them. There's two. Making some travel plans for my family to Disney Concert Hall. That's going to be expensive. Maybe we're going to push that back to next month. Oh, let's start researching some pet sitters. I need to do that anyway. So just a really, really great way to classify information, and information that typically wouldn't be related to one another. These are sort of closely related because they both involve travel, but one of maybe my back burner items is finding a new dentist or getting the muffler fixed on my kid's car. Whatever the case may be, you may have thoughts that are not related in any way whatsoever, but they share a common attribute, the same urgency or status level of back burner, phase 1, and so forth. So I highly encourage you to start using those thought types and thought tags within the brains that you create. Now, the next step, we're going to sort of create a step away from sort of these classifications of categories that we've been spending some time in here. And we're going to start talking about getting data into your brain. I receive data in many different ways. I find something interesting online. Someone shares a zip file with me of a project that they've outlined, or just an email, and so forth. How do I get all of that information into my brain? Well, I want to share with you importing. I'm going to do a quick search for woodworking. There we go. So I do have a thought called woodworking under hobbies, and I happen to have an outline of some research that I've been doing on different species of wood that would work very well for boat building. Okay, random topic. But as you can see, I've got a properly formatted outline, and that is what I'm going to import into the brain. What is a properly formatted outline? It's tab delineated. Every time I tab over, I'm creating a new sub-level and a grouping of child thoughts. So under wood species, one tab over is hardwoods. Way down below, one tab over, softwoods. One tab over from hardwoods, we have oak, cherry, and walnut. One tab over from softwoods, poplar, soft maple. So, and then a tab over, details about that. And I'd like for you to draw your attention here to white oak. Quarter sawn only is the type I'm interested in. Straight cut, blah, blah, blah. It fumes well. Fuming is a way of adding color to wood without actually, painting it or staining it. You fume it with gas, with ammonia. It's dangerous. As you can see, I've got some notes down below. The notes are specified with a dash and a space in my outline. A plus and a space links to a web page. A pipe symbol is going to add a label to that thought. So even within my outline that I've created, I've added these additional characters that have different purpose for the import. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. So just make a mental note of what that looks like with the dashes and the plus and all the tabbed lines. We're going to close this. And here in the brain, we're going to click on File and select Import. Now, I could have just imported a folder directory today, but this is the brain 202, not 101. A folder is quite simple. Every folder becomes a thought. Every file within that folder becomes an attachment. So it's a very simple process to take an existing folder structure and import it into the brain. So we're doing something a little bit more advanced. We're importing a text outline. And here you can see dashes and plus and pipe symbols. It gives you a little bit of the details of the thought structure. So we're going to select our file. And there it is, Wood Research, right there on my desktop. I'll say open. And before I click on import, it scans it to make sure it's properly formatted. It is. I can either create this as a new brain, but in this case, I'm going to add it into my existing brain. This is an amazing way to populate brains very, very quickly. You've got a folder structure, import it into your brain. It creates a copy of everything. It doesn't overwrite the original. The original folder structure will still be there. Now you've got a copy of all that data, all that content internally into your brain. And you can start developing it from there. So here I've got this great, I was about to say Excel spreadsheet. You can import from Excel spreadsheet, properly formatted Excel spreadsheets as well. We're importing from a text file. So I say import. And yes, I do want to import. So just a little safety, are you sure? Yes, I am. So there's my wood species for this woodworking project. If I go into hardwoods and take a look at oak, and it was white oak that we were looking at. Remember that thought for it fumes well. There's the web page on how to safely fume your furniture. Here are the notes. It had a dash and then a star. The star signifies to the note that it's a bulleted item. So I've got my nice bullet list of what I like about fuming white oak. I've got my web page attached, and if I hover over that thought, interesting is the thought label behind the pipe symbol. So all of that information quickly imported, and I just brought in about 15 to 30 different thoughts with a properly formatted outline into the brain. You can also import other file types, other mind mapping file types, such as .mmap files, files, that's Mind Manager and FreeMind. Here I've got a FreeMind file. I'm not even, or FreePlane, I think it's called. It's opening up an app on my other monitor. There it is, okay. So I've got this existing structure that I created in another mind mapping type of app. And as you can see, I can expand it. It goes on and on. So there's other mind mapping softwares out there in the world. Here I've created a structure in one. I'm not going to get into side-by-side comparisons, but one thing that I know of for sure, you've got a limit of how many, they call them nodes, can be created in this structure. How many individual we call them thoughts, they call them nodes. There's a finite number, 256, I think, and boom, that's it. The structure cannot get any bigger. We've created brains and we've seen brains with well over 500,000 thoughts, 1 million thoughts. So that's unlimited mind mapping within the brain. And so if I want to bring this wood structure, Laura Bloom furniture, so that comes under, I'm going to create a new thought where I'll place it. Furniture research. And let's just do one more import really quickly. File and import. And this is an file, so I'll select the file. There it is, open. It's gonna scan it, make sure it's valid. It is. I'll add this under furniture research and import it. And all of the 40 or 50, this one's a little bit larger, but they're all here. I can go in and start reviewing all my different furniture groups and so forth, all quickly and easily imported into the brain. And if I hit the 256 item limit within that app, I can continue on building that in the brain. Now, I also want to talk about exporting. Exporting many different options within the brain. So this entire brain structure, if I'd like, I can click on File, Export, and export the entire thing as a text outline. Now, this is a pretty large brain, so I'm going to find a smaller section of thoughts and export that just so you can see what it looks like. But we can export the brain. Let's say you're no longer going to be using the brain. You're moving into a company that is very strict about what apps can be installed. The brain isn't installed there yet. You at least want a file and folder directory of this project you're working on. You can export your brain into a file and folder structure. Every thought becomes a folder. Notes and file attachments become items within that folder. What you're going to lose is all the wonderful cross references and jump thoughts and the visualization of the plex in a file, in a very linear file and folder structure, obviously. You can export to a text outline or export everything in the brain to a JSON file. Very fantastic feature. What you do with the JSON file is completely up to you. If you are unfamiliar with what JSON files are, then it's, quite simply, this feature isn't for you. You have to have that knowledge, that information about, what to do with JSON in order to export your brain to a JSON and then get it to overlay into another app or something like that. But that's the process that you would use to get something like that started. So many great export capabilities. You can also simply make a BRZ backup of this brain. Why would you want to make a BRZ backup? Many different reasons. Number one, let's say you're going to be doing these changes to a real brain. I'm in a test brain today. This isn't my real brain. We already saw my real brain database. If I were doing this type of changes in mass, grouping thoughts together, changing large chunks of thoughts, their thought types and so forth, I would want a BRZ backup before I get started. If I accidentally mass deleted a large group of thoughts or unlinked something and couldn't remember where it went, oh, I really messed up my brain. I want to roll back to what my brain looked like at noon this afternoon. To do that, you would need to, ahead of time, make a BRZ. So click on File and select, there it is, Backup to Brain Archive. It takes your entire brain database and zips it up into a single file. Great for archiving, for security reasons. It's also great to, I can put it on a thumb drive, and let's say I'm traveling and I'm gonna, I don't know, have a new laptop at my new location or whatever, and I want to install the brain quickly and easily, I can take it as a BRZ file. You can make it so your BRZ files can only be extracted by you and you alone, so they're protected by your account information, your brain account information, or anyone can extract the BRZ. I want to create a BRZ that's all about gardening and share it with my garden club. And anybody that has the brain installed can have a copy of my brain, and they can use that brain to start, growing their own brain database. So I can make a BRZ that I can share with other brain users. So many options there for creating a backup of your brain, and many different reasons as to why that might be necessary. You can also import BRZs, and I talk a little bit about that in the Brain 101. That's how we merge brains together. So let's go ahead and talk about that in detail now. First off, to segment brains into separate topic-specific brains. Let's say this brain is really grown, but I've got my personal life here and my work brain here. My work brain has client information, sales processes and numbers for the past 5 years, marketing and so forth. I want to start sharing this brain with my team. I'm going to upgrade my brain account to team brain and collaborate with my work brain with all of my colleagues at my business. My colleagues at my business do not need to see my health statistics, all of my hobbies, vacation planning, music that I'm interested in. That's of no interest to them. And I don't want to share that. It's time to take this primary brain, this massive brain. A new friend of mine recently referred to it as a monolithic brain. So this is one monolithic brain, everything about me and my life. It's time to make two separate brains, a personal brain and a recreational brain and a work-related brain. So I'm going to control click on personal life, and rather than going through and manually control clicking thought by thought by thought, I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to select related thoughts, and I'll select all child word thoughts, so everything below for, we'll just go 6 generations down. And let's take a guess. How many? Oh, it's too late. The brain's too quick. 443 thoughts, 6 layers down in this particular area. So this branch, notice nothing over here has been selected, unless of course a child thought 6 generations down pointed back to one of these. So you might want to review this a little bit first and just make sure it's everything that you really want it to be. And if it looks good, I am going to right click and copy these selected thoughts. Now I can copy as a text outline. I mentioned that I would share this with you, so let's share it now. Copied that as a text outline. Now I open Notepad++, my little text editor here, and let's create a new thought, and I right click and paste, and there are all 443 thoughts being displayed in a text outline. So this is really great if you need to turn that, a project that you're working in an assignment for school, or an outline for your business partner who doesn't use the brain but wants to see how you've mapped out the org chart, or the phase 1 through 5 of this new project you're working on. Export it to a text outline. If I want to export it to another brain, I right click, and rather than copy the text outline, I'm going to copy the selected thought. So copy 443 thoughts. It copies everything. And there it's already done and copied onto my clipboard. The thought, the file attachments, the notes, the colors, the thought types, the icons, everything copied onto your clipboard. So I'm going to click on File and select to create a brain. And this is my new personal life brain. So I've created my new personal life brain. The brain always randomly selects one of your different themes. It selected Sunrise Bambina, which I think is pre-built into the app when you download the brain. I'll make this one still the light blue. And I have all that information still in my clipboard, so all I have to do is right click and paste, and I have segmented a brain. I've taken a very, very large brain with, I think that brain has 2,000 thoughts, copied 400 of them, and now I'm pasting them into this brain. And it's, like I said, it's all there, all of the notes, the icons. If I go into my hobbies, all of my thought types, everything, file attachments, web pages, it's all there in a separate brain now called my new personal life. My original brain, it's still selected, and now I can, and this once again is another sort of hidden feature of the brain that you can only learn by reading our manual page by page, or joining the Brain 202. Let's say I want to forget these. I always teach on my Brain 101s. Well, number one, I usually mention that I never forget thoughts or delete thoughts. In this case, I do want to delete them. I not only want to forget these thoughts, I want them deleted because I'm about to share this brain with my business colleagues. So if you right click in the selection box, I have the option to first forget 443 thoughts. I'm going to save myself some time and hold down that magic shift key. So I click on shift, right click, and I can delete these 443 thoughts. So I bypass the forgetting part and I go straight into deleting. I'm not going to delete these thoughts. This is a sample brain that I like to use from time to time, so I'm going to keep those there. But that's a really great time saver, that shift, right click, and delete option. Speaking of forgotten thoughts, I also mention how to finally delete a forgotten thought. But sometimes you have more than one forgotten thought. If your brain has grown and evolved over time, we can run a report and say, all right, show me all of my thoughts that are forgotten. I've got more than one forgotten thought. I've got 30. Now I can click on these one by one and view, there's my no mayo chicken salad thought that I forgot, my how-to videos that is unlinked. We call that an orphan thought. It's just kind of floating out there. So I can review these just to make sure these are thoughts that, I've forgotten for one reason or another, and I do want to permanently delete. Once I do my my full review of all of these thoughts, I can forget them one by one. No. We can click on the context menu and we can delete all of these forgotten thoughts. So we can remember them all at once or permanently delete them all at once. The choice is yours. And so let's go ahead and, well, I'm not going to delete these thoughts earlier because, like I said, I like them to be there in my test brain for demo. So you can easily delete a large grouping of thoughts as well. And then finally, let me share with you the comma trick. The comma trick. And if for those of you that are wondering why I keep looking down, I always say this in my Brain 101 classes, I do everything in the brain, and I do mean everything. And that includes making a list of everything that I want to share in today's demo. So this is my sort of checklist of everything that I'm covering today in another brain on another monitor. And so next on my list before I get into QA is the comma trick. I really am excited to share this with you. I don't get enough time to talk about this in my Brain 101 webinars. So under personal life, under hobbies, here, let's just go directly to Glacier, for example. So Glacier National Park, I love to visit national parks. I'm just starting to map out all of the places that I'm gonna go in Glacier National Park. I'm gonna go to a hotel, keep track of the different hotels, the different hikes, the different activities and so forth. But what am I gonna do for Yosemite or Yellowstone? Do I have a Yosemite thought? Yeah, there it is, Yosemite. Oh, it was right in front of me. So Yosemite is gonna have the same thoughts: hotels, hikes, campgrounds, activities. If I'm repeating those words over and over again in the future, look at all the different parks I have so far. I'm gonna have dozens of more as this brain gets larger and larger. This is a great example of when to use the comma trick. The comma trick is my sort of friendly name for context sensitive naming. A commonly used word that you are creating in your brain could benefit from the comma trick. And all the comma trick does is simply adds the parent thought. Under the context of Yosemite, these are all of the campgrounds that I like. So the full thought name is actually Yosemite Campgrounds. And when I go to Glacier, once again, I do comma campgrounds. And so these are Glacier campgrounds. So in the future, when I'm doing a search for campgrounds, you can see I've got Glacier campgrounds or Yosemite campgrounds, not campgrounds or campgrounds. And so this feature becomes incredibly beneficial, again, for those commonly used names. And I do that in my business brain for invoices, different, even years, meeting notes with the date and so forth. Who is this meeting note with? Which company? Meeting note for comma, company X, company A, company B, company C, and so forth. And you can continue going on down the line using that comma trick. If I want to find all of the campgrounds that I like in the north, I'll say comma north and semicolon, another thought, comma south. And maybe Glacier is divided into north, south, east, and west quadrants. Let's do even more. So semicolon, comma east and semicolon, comma west. I've just created 4 thoughts called north, south, east, and west. No, I have glacier campgrounds in the east, glacier campgrounds in the north, and so forth. And I can do that with all campgrounds in all parks, the comma trick. Now, if you forget to use the comma, glacier hotels. Oops, I forgot the comma. Now that's just called hotels, and I might have hotels in Zion and hotels in Yellowstone or so forth. So instead of just saying comma, the brain thinks that you're just adding a comma there and it won't do anything. If you are adding the comma after the thought has already been created, you'll simply need to add the parent name manually. So Glacier Hotels. And the full thought name is Glacier Hotels, but it just appears as hotels. So comma trick, a great way for context sensitive naming. Again, I use that quite a bit in specifically for commonly used thought names. I've got one last feature that I really want to share with you before we jump into the Q&A. So thank you everyone for staying with me, and Juan, we'll get to Q&A here in just a moment. But the last feature that I want to share with you, let's say I've got a thought for passwords, and I happen to have, I think it's an attachment. Here it is, airline program passwords. So this is not a real document. This is a sample document. If I open this document up, it opens on another monitor. You can see it's just got some notes in there. But let's say I put in all of my airline contact information, passwords, and I've got some sensitive information in the brain. From time to time, I do put very sensitive information in my brain, and I can password protect individual file attachments. Now, you can also link to a file that's online in Dropbox, Google Drive, what have you. If those are password protected documents that are not available to the public, you've got to log in with your account information. You can just simply link to those in the brain. And even if your brain were to ever fall in the wrong hands, you accidentally tweet out, link to it online, or you lose your little thumb drive that had your brain on a BRZ and it wasn't protected by your account info. You can, if a thought points to a page that other person doesn't have access to, then it stops right there. They won't be able to log in to that account. And in this case, I like to password protect documents from time to time. And that is simply done by, I've got a file attachment, just as I would any other thought in my brain. But in this case, I right click and I select to encrypt. I want to encrypt this file so that password is required. Maybe I'm about to share this brain with my colleagues, but there's a few documents on here that are projects in development. They're not ready for prime time yet. I don't want to share them with the whole team. Great, I can go to those documents, those individual file attachments. I give myself a prompt. So my favorite insect. You can make this as complicated or as easy as you'd like, but remember this, whatever you type in there in the password, it is encrypted and it cannot be unencrypted. It cannot be unencrypted, meaning if someone else gets a hold of your brain, they wouldn't be able to get into this. If you forget what it is that the password is, even with your own prompt, and you contact us at the Brain Technology saying, oh, please, can you extract this document because I can't remember my password? The answer is quite simple. We can't help you with that. Cannot help you with that. It cannot be unencrypted. So my favorite insect is the bumblebee. The scientific name is the bombus, bombus. So B-O-M-B-U-S, bombus is the genus of the bumblebee. Um, Case sensitive, it has to be typed just as you're seeing it right now. And yes, I do understand I cannot be unencrypt this information, so I'll encrypt that. And my document is now encrypted. To open this file attachment, you just saw me earlier when it was still just a Word document, click and it opens. Now click and you are prompted. If I type in some gibberish, decrypt, it just clears the field. And I can do this as many times as I'd like. It's not going to delete the file after 5 attempts or change the whatever it is. If I don't type in the capital B-O-M-B-U-S, decrypt, nope, it's case sensitive, has to be typed exactly as it was entered, capital B-O-M-B-U-S, and I decrypt, and I now have access to my document. As long as this brain stays open, I can navigate back and get to this, this file attachment. And there it opens right up. But as soon as I close this brain and return to it, I'll need to type in my encrypted password once again. So great, that's everything on my list that I wanted to share with you. Did I share all the features of the brain? No, I did not. There are many, many more. Now's the time. If you've got a question, go ahead and present it to Juan. Juan will throw a few questions my way. But also, I'll remind everyone, and since we're running a little bit over time now, you can always write into us, support@thebrain.com. We're happy to give you answers to any of the questions you may have. And I'll also direct you over to, if you go to our website at thebrain.com, and specifically go to the login, you'll log in to access all of your own brains, and a couple of public brains will be available for you as well. So here I am at thebrain.com, and if I log into my account, I will have access to all of my online brains, and at the very bottom of the list will be a couple of publicly available brains. One of them is the Brain Knowledge Base. Now my graphics are still loading up here. The Brain Knowledge Base. And the Brain Knowledge Base has access to video tutorials. You can do searches in here for features of the brain that you're interested in, maybe find a video tutorial on that, more information. But again, if you have a question for us, send us a note, support@thebrain.com. We're happy to answer any questions you have. And with that, Juan, do you have any challenging questions for me out there?
Yeah, it looks like we got a couple questions here. First one
Okay.
is, are there any updates regarding the Android app? And I mean, I don't know if you want to answer that, but I
Yes.
certainly have an answer for that.
Yes, yes. We recently updated the Android app, I think just even this past week. But I will share this with you. So yes, go ahead and go out to the Google Play Store to download the Android app. But also, the brain is constantly in development. We had a new build go out this week. Maybe Juan, you've got some information about another build coming up. That I'm not even aware of. The brain is always under development. Even here with, if you've been following the brain for years, you'll know that our new web client is all new, rebuilt from the ground up, faster than ever. The editing capability within this brain is fantastic and emulates everything that happens on the desktop as well. People are finding more and more that they're going to the web application over the desktop app. It's not intended to replace the desktop app. It's not intended to replace iOS or Android. If you're having any trouble with Android, go ahead and go visit while you're waiting for the next build to come out. Go ahead and visit the same brain available to you by logging into your account through the web client. And yeah, if you had another update on what's going on with Android, Juan, please let us know.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that we just released a new version for Android that fixed a couple issues.
Yeah,
So yeah, thanks for providing that information. Next
yeah.
question here. from a Victor Espinola. Looks like he's asking for the status of the Vulkan version, which I assume he means the web client.
That's right. Yeah, Vulkan was our code name for the web client when it was still in alpha and then beta. We don't call it Vulkan now. It's simply called the web client because it is out there. So if you log into your account from www.thebrain.com, or if you go directly to app.thebrain.com, you are in the new web client, which was codenamed Vulkan during its production phases. But I'll share this with you. We're not done yet. There's new builds coming out from time to time, and we've got a lot of great new features in store that are on the way. So stay tuned when we've got a big release with Vulkan. We made a big deal, and there's some videos about Vulkan and its development available on the recordings page on our website, thebrain.com. So you can see sort of how we built up to this. Follow us on Twitter. Follow Harlan Hugh on Twitter. Every now and then he drops the gem of information about new developments that are sort of in the pipeline for the new web client. So keep your eyes open, and we're very excited about some future updates that are on the way. I think that's about all I
Awesome.
can safely say about that.
Yeah. No, awesome. That's great information. A lot of good stuff coming for the web client.
Yes.
Looks like we have a final question here.
Okay.
Sort of like a longer answer, so we'll probably have to cut it off after this one.
Yeah.
Looks like Rusty Riggs wants to know how to restructure his 50,000 plus thought brain.
Wow.
He
50,000.
mentions,
Yeah.
using, separating it by different types, tags, colors. He's asking basically, what's the best approach to splitting up a brain of this size?
Yeah, I would say from the Rusty, without seeing your brain and even knowing what your brain is about, the content of your brain. Are you a rocket scientist? Are you a gym teacher, a doctor, a lawyer? It doesn't matter. A student, it doesn't matter. The list goes on and on. Without knowing the content of your brain, step one, create a BRZ. I can't stress it enough. Create a brain backup. So you've got a backup of this brain in case phase two of restructuring your brain doesn't work out to your liking. You spend some time and you decide to move a whole bunch of thoughts around, and then lightning strikes and you think, oh, wait a minute, I should have separated this into two separate brains before I made all these other changes. Great, we can go right back to where you were on May 25th, 2023 at 12:12 p.m. You can utilize that BRZ as a safety net to go back and make changes. And then from there, use today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded, so you can watch it at your own pace. Use today's webinar sort of as an outline. Phase one, go through those large thought clusters where you've got too many thoughts and create some intervening categories. Phase two, create the thought types that you think you'll utilize and start adding thoughts to thought types. Is it going to happen in one day? Certainly not. 50,000 thoughts is a lot of content. You've been building, obviously working on this brain for quite some time. So take your time, and just as you're using the brain, you'll be in an area, I'll be in an area of my own recreational brain and think, you know what? Things have gotten a little messy, and just this area, I'm going to clean it up today. And it inspires me to go in and clean up other areas of my brain from time to time. And sort of, using that as your new sort of process. I'm not always just gathering information out of my brain and adding to information. I'm cleaning, I'm straightening and tidying house as I go. That's the best advice I can give. Should you divide it into two separate brains or 5 or 10? I don't know. That's a very, very personal choice. That's totally up to you. But we're always available to help you. You can talk to Juan, you can talk to myself, reach out to us at support@thebrain.com. And if you are on our website at thebrain.com, and you see this little pop-up happen down here in the lower right-hand corner, and it says, "Hi, this is Matt. How can I help?" Or, "Hi, this is Juan. What can I help you with today?" That's really us. It's not a bot. That's a real human being. We love helping people, better understand the application and work with the brain and answering your questions. So our support staff is just a fantastic group of individuals that are always available to help, Monday through Friday from from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That button is the other end of that button is a real human being, not AI, not a bot. You can talk to a real human and share some screenshots with us, get our feedback. And to be quite honest with you, Juan might suggest something different than what I would suggest. Like I might look at a grouping of thoughts and say, "Oh, you need some thought types." And Juan might look at that and go, "This is really two different brains. You're mixing two different topics. You need to, separate them as individual brain databases." Both good feedback, and it's really up to you because it's your data, it's your digital brain, or a reflection of your own thought process. Excellent, excellent question. Thank you, Rusty. Thank you, Juan, and thank you everyone that joined us today for the Brain 202. Again, we're always happy to help. You know how to get in touch with us at support@thebrain.com. Stay tuned for a lot of exciting new updates and developments that we have for the web client. Again, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll be in the first to know of when a new feature becomes available that we're very excited to share with the world. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week and weekend. And as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks everyone.